Hello and welcome to another week of the Story Darks podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are wrapping up The Fade Out by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips and Betty Breitweiser with Volume 3. And we get finally resolution. I guess it depends what you consider resolution in a story like this. It's called The Fade Out, I think, for a very specific reason.
The first thing on my notes here is the ending. You know, we spent the last couple of weeks talking about all the ways that Brubaker and Phillips have kind of subverted expectations for this type of noir story, right? You know, in terms of like who the main characters are, what their motivations are, things like that. It's a setting that's familiar for people who are fans of these types of stories, but like their approach was kind of sideways. You know, it was a little askew, a little off center, and yet the book ends in a very traditional kind of noir way, right? In a very like that's Chinatown Jake kind of way, where it resolves, and I guess resolve is kind of the wrong word. It ends. You get answers, but none of them are really satisfying.
Well, so I was feeling pretty pleased with myself after last week's discussion, and I genuinely had no memory of the ending. And I was talking about the two people who like have the most inside scoop as being Dottie and Brodsky. Mm-hmm. And those two were very key players in this final. Like Dottie was really set up to as if she was going to be a lot bigger part of the reveal, and she really wasn't.
She wasn't.
Although it was very clear that she knew he was a Fed agent.
Yeah,
probably more. And she's just like, what good would the truth do? She's very utilitarian.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love we got that little bit of narration kind of when we got her side of the story a little bit, which I think was some of that flashback with some of the flashback with the Drake Miller there, the undercover FBI agent posing as a producer. We got that little bit of narration for Dottie saying that like she understood that like knowledge is power, and knowing that and knowing how to withhold it and who to withhold it from, like that gave her a sense of agency. And so the fact that, yes, she did know, kind of who Drake Miller was and kind of what his deal was, and that he was there to try to root out communists. And she had a sense of, you know, and I do think in withholding information specifically from Charlie, she was doing it with his best interest in mind. Do you agree with that? That she was, she was trying to say like, don't go down this route because it's nothing fruitful is going to come of it. Whether or not she knew it was exactly tied to Valeria's death, which we find out was a murder. Whether she knew that specifically, I think she knows, hey, this guy's got his own thing going on, and nothing good is going to happen if you go down this route. You know.
Well, let me ask you. So, like Charlie didn't like this guy all along because of some smug look he got. Yeah. The night of Val's death, or maybe it was a different time. There's a lot of time jumping here.
There is. The
smug look I'm interpreting as that guy knows Charlie was an informant for Gil.
Yes.
It's kind of like,
I
like good boy.
I believe so. Yes. Cause I think we get soft confirmation of that. When Charlie goes to the office, right. And Drake's not there anymore. And the other two guys he runs into, one of them was one of the feds that Charlie worked with, So the implication being that like, there's no way that Drake Miller would be set up specifically at Victory Street Pictures as a fake producer, as his cover, and not know what was going on with someone like Charlie, what Charlie did, and his association with Gil.
It just seems like he took it as like a sign of weakness from Charlie or something.
I think so. Yeah. I think what we see from the way he's portrayed is that he's looking for leverage on everybody. Right. That's what Drake Miller's thing is. He's trying to find the pressure point for everybody. And that's what led him down this path of investigating Al Camp. one of the co-founders of the studio, right? And he uncovers something truly hideous and terrible, kind of what happened up on that ranch with, kind of the abuse of the child stars and all that. But he doesn't. I guess he didn't know what that was. He thought he was uncovering more communists, right? But he's trying to push everyone he can, because he thinks that's what gives him power, right? If I have dirt on everybody,
Right.
and I can push on
Not
everybody.
really even communist hunting power. He now has fallen in love with the power of his position. And, I think
Yes,
he
but I
gets
think,
pulled from the assignment because he's not really out for commies anymore. He's so
well,
self-serving.
I think what they say there is that the reason he was leaning on Val was because he believed that she had information on Al Camp as a communist. He was going in that direction, when what Val was protecting in a way was that, like, kind of terrible sword past, which brings up bad things for her as well, as she was a victim of this. But she wouldn't name names in that party scene where he kind of snaps and loses it, because she couldn't actually give him the thing that he was looking for. Because I do think he wasn't trying to expose like a child sex ring. He was trying to expose communists, and he got so drunk on that power that, knowing he can lean on people, that he snapped, because he was like, well, why don't you just accede to my request here, my demand? Give me this name, tell me what I want to know. And Val was determined not to do that. I don't think so much to protect Al Camp as to protect herself some too, and protect the other kids that were there. But I think he got drunk on all that power. And they talk about it too. Like, he loved the lifestyle.
He was
loved
also exploiting women, and he loved
Yes.
being at parties and things like
Yes,
that.
yes.
And I think it's really not hard to imagine a world in which he says to someone like, I don't need any proof. All I have to do is say your name and communist in the same sentence.
Exactly. Yep.
And shows like, God, what a timely book this ended up being. Like,
Really?
when you compare the events here to when it was written, I don't know if there were any like direct comps in the world at the time it was written, as opposed to now. I think you see that kind of, Red Scare type power out of like ICE agents. And
Mm-hmm.
you certainly have like the most famous child sex trafficking ring in the history of the world being leaked right now. And, I saw a great meme today. It was like, the Epstein files have been released now in the United States and in Great Britain. Here's the list of arrests in Great Britain. Here's the list of arrests in America. And there's none.
Yeah.
Which is like exactly what's happening here. Like, they just move him around. They find out he's crooked, and they're like, he's bent, but
Yeah.
he's still bent, and produces enough results for us that we'll just move him over to where they move him, Broadway.
Yes. Just, take him somewhere else. He's becoming too much of a hassle now, so we'll just disappear and put him somewhere else. But yeah, that kind of omerta about all this, I think that's what makes Brodsky, in my mind, like, such an interesting character. Because I don't think Phil Brodsky's meant to be shown in like a good light or anything. He's not a good person, and he would probably admit he's not a good person. I think he probably does multiple times.
But I think that's
book.
what he actually gets credit for.
I think he does, because
Charlie thinks he's a good guy, and he's just not.
Yeah. I think if Brodsky has self-awareness, and I think Charlie even, we get some of that narration of like Brodsky compares him, like, we're not that different, buddy. You and I, not that far apart. And Charlie takes that like great offense to that, because he's the kind of person that would. But I think us as the reader, if you've been following Don and really looking at Charlie's personality, he isn't that far off from Brodsky. Brodsky just has the self-awareness of it. And Brodsky has he's got a code there. It's a bent code, but like in the end there, when he confronts Charlie, what's Charlie's first reaction? Are you here to kill me? because he assumes
Right.
that's what Brodsky does. And Brodsky's like, no, moron. Like,
I'm cleaning up your mess, dummy.
yeah, why would I do that? Like, because he understands something that Charlie, I guess, in his drunken state at the very end of the book, maybe gets to this idea of just in this world, like, what is truth, man? Right? You know, like this idea of because Brodsky knows that, like, okay, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you what I think happened, quote unquote, right? What I love the way that that story is framed of like, maybe he did this and maybe this happened and all that. But like, I'm going to tell you this and it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change what you think, what you feel. It's not going to change anything you do in the future. I'm going to tell you this and you're going to be in the know. You're not going to feel any better about it. Hell, you might feel worse after this, but you knowing doesn't change anything because you see how the world works, and the world being Hollywood at this time, like you knowing gives you no power, gives you no leverage. It does nothing for you other than maybe satisfy something in your soul. And clearly at the end, it hasn't done that. And Brodsky knows it. He's aware of that. And so he gives Charlie that, knowing that Charlie's not going to use it. He can't use it. It's like,
it's literally, well, and that's what Dottie was saying. It's like,
yeah,
if you get it, it's of no use to you.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
point in getting it.
And I think
other than selfishly to scratch the itch.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's something that Dottie understands, Brodsky understands. Charlie absolutely does not. But again, he's not coming from it from this like righteous sense, although I did like here early on in this volume when he confronts Gil about what Gil's been doing. Like he thinks Gil's trying to blackmail the studio and all this stuff. And of course we find out that Gil doesn't actually know anything, right? He's literally just poking the bear, wants to see what happens.
Yeah.
And Charlie also being, and Gil calls Charlie out, right? He's like, Val was your friend, blah, blah, blah. You're not even trying to solve this thing. And Charlie does kind of meekly, like, I am trying to do my thing here. And I do like when they kind of team up in that moment.
Well, you get the Hollywood writers, like, actually
trying to write the story.
It's a totally different book, but I love the idea of two mystery writers trying to solve a mystery.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's more of a cozy mystery premise.
What I will say
certainly doesn't go. It lasts for like what 8 pages before they're literally shot.
It absolutely doesn't work, but in terms of, it doesn't work out for them. But what I love about the construct is when we see their conversation, they're talking about it as writers. Right, Charlie lays out the 3 points there, and Gil's there, like leaning back, he's got a cigarette.
About the plot holes, yeah,
exactly. They're thinking about it like a script, like a story, and that is what their motivation is in terms of, okay, well, we have these 3 things that seem maybe likely, maybe not, but they're all circumstantial. So we're going to go investigate and try to solve these plot holes, just like they were if they were writing a script. And the fact that that's where their mind goes, which is, I mean, that's like that's the premise for like a half dozen procedurals on network television. Like that was Castle, using a writer to, which is fun and cozy. Those are great and all. And obviously turns out better on when that's the premise of your show than in a book like this. Cause you're right. It turns out horribly wrong. They go out to the farm up north, up in Ojai, right? And they don't find anything. As soon as they get out there, they see people there and they get shot at and Gil dies. So this trip
and they find out that they're 3 steps behind still.
Yeah.
Like them trying to get ahead of it.
3 steps at best.
right. The whole place has been cleared out and the man they're trying to like gotcha is dead.
Yeah. It comes to absolutely nothing. And again, I love that presentation, these characters that like, they have put things together kind of right. They've got the clues, they have the leads, and they're not on the wrong track, per se, but they don't have the skills or ability or the wherewithal to follow through on it correctly.
Well, Charlie's big self-revelation is that he cannot think more than 1 step ahead of himself.
Yes.
since because of his PTSD or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And like but the interesting thing is he seems to have a correct read on Brodsky from day one.
Pretty much,
And
yeah.
he's even right when he says, Gil makes this phone call. They're going to double down, go clear out the
Yeah.
office. And Brodsky's so arrogant, it doesn't even lock the office.
Yeah.
So I can just walk in my Invisible Man garb, which, by the way, just calls so much more attention to yourself than walking around like a person.
Well,
Um,
I think the idea that was dropped in early on, like the actor who plays that, there's some throwaway line like it takes so long to get in that costume and that
right.
makeup that he walks around all day with it. So anytime anyone sees him, they're like, hey, they assume it's not Charlie. They assume it's the actor doing that. So yeah,
True.
that
Although
makes a
he's
little
been
sense.
busted
Yeah.
by several people who just
Well, yeah,
like, hey,
because
Charlie.
it it's a dumb plan. Let's not kid ourselves here. But
It's a guy who can't think more than one step ahead type plan.
it really is. Yeah.
But his plan to search the office was actually his best long-term thinking because that was a two-step execution of,
Mhm.
Gil calls in, spooks him out of the office. I
Mhm.
go in, raid the office. That's not a bad plan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he didn't really seem to have any idea what he was looking for.
Nope.
He was just hoping there would be an open file on the desk or
Yep.
something that was like, here's the
Yeah.
information Charlie would badly want.
Well, yeah,
In a file
because
folder.
in the movies, the thing you need is always right there. You
Right.
know. So yeah, he gets there. It's like, nope. Didn't think. Thought far enough ahead to get into the office pretty smartly, and then was like, oh wait, there are more steps that aren't there. Oh crap! What do I do once I'm in the office? Yeah, he didn't get that far.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel bad for him. Gil, like, I liked the way Gil was written from beginning to end here. He is like, I mean, he's like a season seven Toby, right? I mean, you just
Yeah.
knew he had to go down in some
Yeah.
self-righteous cause that was completely unnecessary. He had a relatively easy life and gig laid out for him. Like
Mhm.
all he had to do was ghostwrite for Charlie and not stick his nose and stuff, not pick fights with people, not gamble his money away. And he just like I love the way they said it about his wife. Like, she kind of almost has a sigh of exhale of like, okay, it finally
Yeah.
happened. Like
Well,
like
yeah.
it
Yeah.
was gonna happen eventually. We just didn't know how ugly it would be or how it would go down or how much collateral damage there would be.
Mhm.
And so she can finally just kind of say, "Whew, okay, moving on now."
Yeah. Yeah.
Still
Well,
sad. Like
yeah.
she's not rooting against him. She just knows who he is.
It was inevitable. Yeah, and I love in the aftermath of the fight in the first issue of this volume when Gil kind of goes on his rant and he's like, I don't care if we win, I just want them to lose. Like that's it. His motivation is just like we got to. I'm willing to do anything to take them down. I'm going to expose them, and they fail at that. They don't get that, but you get into his mindset, right?
Yeah, he's
This
basically a suicide bomber, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. It is that level of
Which by
self
the way,
destruction, I guess, self sabotage.
not a great quality in a partner.
No, no,
When
it's tough.
someone's like, "Oh, I don't really care what happens to me as long as I get to do this," that's where
Yeah,
you start backing away from them slowly and say, "Okay, well, they can't be talked out of it. They're
yeah,
definitely gonna die.
yeah,
It's gonna or worse."
yeah.
And
Well, but
Charlie didn't have
and,
the sense to pull out.
yeah, well, and Charlie definitely doesn't have that sense. Let's not kid ourselves here.
Well,
Um,
nor does he have anywhere else to go.
that is true. That is true. Yeah.
Although it seems like he did regain enough of his writing ability, after all of this.
Well, I think
Um,
that is well, and I think that's part of what we see kind of as we pick up after his talk with Brodsky there, this idea of like you have a position back now, right? You have a job again. You're doing, whether you're happy or not, it doesn't matter. You're doing the thing that you can do. So you're not going to blow that up, right? You're not going to throw that all away because by trying to expose this story of whatever to do what? To what end? Like Brodsky knows that Charlie isn't wired that way.
Right.
He has a read on Charlie that Charlie, I guess, begrudgingly comes to understand about himself in those final pages of the book, as he's like drunkenly stumbling around L.A. there. This idea that like he doesn't have Minim. Brodsky knows that Charlie isn't the hero. He knows he's not the person to go and blow the lid off of this and sacrifice everything he has in order to in the name of truth, right, or justice, which Charlie claims he wants. He claims he wants that for Val's death, which we now know is murder. Like he claims he wants that, but in the end, man, he doesn't go after that because that's not who he is.
Right. I mean, he's kind of a born to lose type guy. And then I
Yeah.
feel like there's or at least post-war Charlie is a born to lose.
Well, yeah. Our character that we're following, yeah.
Because it would be very interesting to get like a flashback issue just to see what his working relationships were like before the war. That said,
Well,
I didn't need any more flashbacks. In fact, I got a little irritated at the beginning of volume 3 when it flashbacks to his and Val's relationship.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're finally getting like why he's so obsessed over this one thing. And it's like, that was good information, but I felt like you climb the top of the roller coaster and right before they start the descent, they're like, let me take you on a side quest. It's like, no. The time for that is come and gone. Like, we need to go downhill as fast as possible. You have all this momentum. They didn't squander. They just almost did. Like,
I mean, that's only a handful of pages. There, we also got a little bit of flashback.
Right. No, I thought when I thought it was
Gail
going to
and Charlie
be
met
a whole issue, I was like, oh man,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is like,
yeah.
I hate when people pump the brakes like that in the home stretch, which he did not do. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I had a moment of dread where I was like, no, don't do this.
I will say though, one thing I really loved about that flashback, is that in that moment there, as we're going back through there, I'm trying to scroll back to find that now. I guess no, that wasn't in that's in like the second issue or whatever it is. When we get that flashback, we've been talking about the narration being like this third person looking at the story kind of thing.
Yeah.
When we go back into his memory, we actually get Charlie's narration. He's speaking in the first person. And the narration changes. The lettering changes. It goes from all caps. It goes to a mixed case, like almost like a handwritten kind of thing. And it's those kind of little ticks there. That one moment where we know this narration is specifically coming from Charlie, as opposed to our detached third person throughout the rest of the story. In that one moment, he's recounting that like one weekend with Val when he went and found her. We are actually getting his thoughts, and it's in the first person, and just changing changing the lettering of the narration into something that's different, to give you that sense that you're not reading the same narration. It's not meant to be thought of and understood the same way as the reader. It's those little kind of small ticks that I love in comics, and they didn't go into, for them to kind of deploy that here to let you know that this is different. That this is a memory, this is a flashback, whatever you want to call it. Those kind of small little visual ticks on the page, I think, stuff like that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to the Descender one, the Steve Wands and different shapes and bubbles and colors, all that stuff. I was thinking that there was some that were Dottie oriented, but as I'm looking back at what I thought it was, it's just the narrator is very in Dottie's head at the beginning of Where Angels Fear to Tread, which I think is the second issue in this arc.
Which is what the narrator does though, right? Whoever, exactly. because they did it early.
Limited omniscience third person. There's some
exactly. Yeah. Whoever is in the focus at the time, because we talked about it last week as well. When Gil had kind of his one big issue, right? When he went and went to the meeting with Dashiell Hammett and whatnot, and as he was trying to figure out his blackmail scheme, we got the narrator from his point of view, which were talking about his thoughts and all that. But again, still in that detached third person way, and Dottie gets the same thing when she's kind of the main focus. And so that's just the conceit of what they've set up with their story structure, which I think is an interesting thing, because there is a world where this book is totally spoken, narrated, literally narrated from Charlie's point of view, where it's all,
Oh, sure,
I did
yeah.
this, that there's a form of that book that would still totally work, especially because
I mean,
Charlie is,
the one I want is the one where it's from Brodsky's, point of view,
oh yeah, that'd
and
be more
and
interesting.
you
Yeah, yeah,
you would get such scathing statements about
yeah,
Charlie, about
yeah,
Gil,
yeah,
about
yeah.
Dottie, even
Mm,
he has that sense of superiority from one, knowing his station, and two, knowing he's the only one who's just consistently crushing it in terms of getting their job done.
well, yeah, because he's the one that knows. And there was even some line there about, what his job is. It was like, um, oh yeah, yeah. It was like, the studio had covered up Val's murder and he needed to make sure it stayed that way. That's what fixers do. But they also kept records to be used for leverage. So this idea of that, not only does he have to know stuff, you have to be in the know in order to fix things, but you have to be able to hold on to things, the information, right?
Right.
You can't just find out about it. You have to have it so you can basically keep reinforcing the lie if need be. So you can have that leverage. So he's a person that, yeah, that his whole being, everything about him is just to know stuff.
Well,
You
and
know?
he is the only one who does not use that knowledge for other things or dangle it. Like Dottie
Yes.
likes dangling it. Like she
Yes.
likes letting everyone know
Mhm.
how much
Mhm.
more she knows than everyone
Yeah.
else.
Well,
Whereas he is perfectly content to let you guess what he knows or doesn't know,
mhm.
guess what is true, what is not true.
Yeah.
It does not matter what you think
Well,
about a situation or him, as long as he possesses the truth and has done his work to suppress it.
totally. Because you're right.
A
Because
very impressive character.
well, because Dottie understands that having the knowledge can help her do her job better, right? She can
Well, but
use that leverage to get things done. Brodsky knowing is his job. You know, his whole job is just to amass information. Dottie's trying to she's trying to find stuff out so she can use it. She's the one that is applying the leverage. Brodsky has the information so someone else can use it as leverage, right? So yeah, he
well,
has
that
no
and
larger
his
goal.
his job is to stop it from circulating, which I
Or,
guess hers is too.
or circulating the only things he
Hers is
wants.
to
Yeah.
distort it or obscure the truth by
Yes.
replacing it with an alternate narrative.
Yeah. Which is all well,
Um,
I mean, Brodsky's doing that too. But again, if you're doing a
right.
cover up or whatnot, yeah, yeah.
But
But
the
again,
line about her is very interesting because um, sometimes she couldn't believe this was her job, helping actors keep their secrets, rewriting the story, make beautiful people even more seductive. Also, John Q. Public wouldn't see who they really are. But Dottie had learned long ago that the world really didn't want to know the truth about anyone. They'd rather have a story. And I was like, oh, this book is about two Hollywood storytellers. One of them is Charlie and one of them is Dottie. And one of
yeah,
them is telling
yeah,
the story on the screen and the other one's telling the story in the world. Uh,
yeah.
neither they are both equally untrue. Um, in Brodsky's the only one with a full deck of cards here
Yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of truth telling. So
yeah. Well, yeah. Well, he's in a truth knowing. He doesn't
truth
actually
knowing,
care.
right?
Yeah, yeah. It's about I can't control the situation if I don't know all the variables. So I got to know everything so I know what to dole out.
My
But yeah,
suspicion is he also keeps quite a bit from the people above him to give them plausible deniability. Like
one
I think
thousand percent. Yeah,
Brodsky has so much on his shoulders, it's crazy.
yeah, yeah. Let's take this example here. Let's take Val's murder right now. What do you think the people, like Al Camp and Victor Thursby, like, what do you think they know about Val's death? Probably what Brodsky told them. It's
They probably, honestly, they may believe it's a suicide. Like if he did his job well,
that's what I'm saying. If
yeah,
they were to ask him what happened, he would probably look at them and be like, "Do you really want to know?" Or he would just say, "This is." He would tell them, and they would know not to pry into it.
right. He'd say,
Because they don't.
paper police are saying it's a suicide.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
something like that, or like, well, I read the
Yeah.
paper this morning. It says it was a suicide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're that I think that's 100% true that he is putting out the story to protect everyone, and by everyone meaning the higher ups above him, his bosses. So yeah, not definitely not telling them what they need to know to reinforce the lie, reinforce what they're saying is truth. And only telling them if they maybe ask him or make him. Otherwise, he understands like doesn't help you if you know the truth, you know? That actually makes things worse for you. So
Right.
and I would imagine they understand that too, and that we hired you so we don't have to know the truth, you know? I assume that's baked into the agreement. So they're not shocked if he's withholding things from them, because I'm sure that was in the deal to start with. That you deal with the stuff and you tell me what I need to know, you know, or what I have to know, that kind of thing.
Right. Let me say the most tragic thing about this book is that the like perverse studio head, child sex trafficking, you know, molestation of all these young
Mhm.
actresses, things like that, uh, has essentially no bearing on the plot at all.
None.
And Gil gives his life for it when how much more would he have enjoyed the actual villain here and trying to bring that guy down, the
Yeah.
guy who's like,
Actually
you
murdered
know,
Val. Yeah.
actually murdered Val, but also roots out commies, including him,
Mhm.
you know, and has ruined his life for personal gain. You know, I don't like, because I don't think a lot of those, you know, I'm sure they had like a few like Dwight Schrute type loyalists, but I think a lot of your like commie hunters were like this guy of like, they're not really true believers, but it's a really easy path to power.
Well, yeah, yeah. And at this time too, there's no downside, right?
Right. Yeah.
At this point in
You're a
history, there's
hero
no
for doing it.
downside.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Everyone's scared of the commies, right? And so you're out there and yeah, and what's he doing? He's getting wined and dined. He's getting to go to these great parties, being around all these fabulous people. He's doing all this stuff. And they just say he got seduced by it. So yeah, there is a nihilism to the story, which is inherent kind of in these noir and these noir, you know, crime fictions. But yeah, it amounts to nothing. It is like the
No, it's
biggest
just a
of red herrings.
tragic part of the world
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
like depresses the hell out of Charlie and has
Yeah.
nothing to do with
Yeah.
Val's death. Now,
Exactly.
perhaps
Yeah.
it's why Val was in the situation she was in.
Well, well, and
But so
it,
there's like there's the subtext there.
it was, you're right. It was kind of the impetus because Drake Miller, he knew he had information. He knew that Val had secretive information. He just thought it was something else. And while she was, again, not trying to protect Al Camp, I think trying to protect her and the fellow child actors and the fellow victims. You know, I think that was probably her mindset. But yeah, this Drake Miller guy was out there just thinking he could get more leverage on someone. You know, because everyone's a commie in his eyes. So yeah, it was the impetus for, but it wasn't the reason why, you know. And yeah, it turns out to nothing. And yeah, I guess he met a terrible end at the end, but he didn't he didn't pay for his crimes in a way. There was no restitution to his victims. It just something that happens that gets lost to history now, you
Yeah.
know. And yeah, that's wildly depressing and sad, but also not unlike the truth in a lot of ways, and that kind of makes it sadder. But yeah, that is it's the way they set up this story and giving kind of all these angles, and to get to the end and be like, oh, really? Again, I think that is the intentional kind of nihilism they're going for this type of story. So at the end, you're left feeling a lot like Charlie as he's stumbling through LA, just like drunk out of his mind again, just trying to grapple with the idea that like, what was all this for? What was any of this for? You know, didn't make a damn bit of difference. Doing all this, everything happened. Valerie died for nothing, you know, and here I am doing this job still
Gil died for
because
nothing.
yeah, Gil died for
I
nothing. Yeah.
mean,
And here we're all just doing the job because that's what we do. We're all still here doing the same stuff we were doing before. Um, Nothing's changed. Nothing's different. You know,
No, I mean they're
uh,
literally. It ends at the movie premiere with
yeah,
the replacement blonde.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and even the head of the studio is still so torn up about it. He's sitting watching his own cut,
Yeah,
back
yeah,
at home.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
But it the outward like, the public facing story is that, oh, it's just so tragic and all that, but hey, life goes on, right? And for Charlie to have that realization of like, yeah, it does go on, and again, nothing he can do about it, and he knows he's not going to do anything about it. There's nothing he can do. Exposing the story network, what good does that do? Nothing comes of it. And that just wildly cynical attitude for a man who's already pretty cynical, right? Man who came back from the war pretty beaten down already,
he's
already
one
had
of
a
those
pretty low
guys
outlook on life and just got
who,
lower.
yeah, I think the problem is that deep down he's still a sentimental guy. He's just learned how to parade around the cynicism as a
That's okay.
self-defense
I can see that.
mechanism. Like
I can see that. Yeah.
because I think like the
Well, because he
fact
does care. He does
he
care.
does care, and when he has that moment with Valerie, up at the secret beach house,
Mhm.
and like has this like really pure love for her, where he's not
Mhm.
interested. Like they
Yeah.
sleep together with their clothes on,
Yeah.
like little kids who've run away into the woods, and
Yeah.
something like it's so pure, it's so innocent, um, and he immediately bristles at showing that side of himself and buries
Mhm.
himself in alcohol again. Meaning, like underneath the alcohol is who he is now, but
Yeah.
underneath that, there is still that remnant of the person that he used to be. And I assume that's who he was before the war. Was like
one would assume. Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah. Yeah.
bleeding heart,
Yeah.
very open, sensitive, sweet
Yeah.
guy.
And also, I think we got in that little flashback of how him and Gil met. Like, he gets an Oscar nom, and he's very humble about it. He seems like a genuinely decent person. Then comes back from the war, and he's broken. And so the version that we see, yeah, is essentially at rock bottom and finds a way to go lower at the end. So whatever, you're right, whatever remnants of that former life, and that former outlook of the world, still there at times, but I think he's aware that it still exists and it's part of him. But I think that makes it sadder for him because he knows that's not going to serve him anything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
it makes him more depressed to know that there's this part of him that just no good comes of that. There's no reason to have, like, why does he have that kind of still sentimental bleeding heart side of him when, it's
I
not
mean,
gonna.
he's walking around with an open wound is
Yeah, yeah,
essentially,
yeah, yeah. He can't
his
he can't
problem.
that's of no use to him now. So why does he still have that? Why does he still feel this way? He doesn't want to, not because he doesn't want to feel, because he knows it's useless. It's that sort of thing.
Except that I think that's the part of him that can write well.
Well, maybe it is. Maybe that's what he's able to tap back into to actually do his job again. But yeah,
But I
I
get
don't
the
know.
sense that he's not like nothing ever happened and he's back to the way he was. I think he's just like, I can put pen to paper now and write
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something,
No, I don't think he's going to be
and his
an
name will
award-winning writer
still
anymore.
sell. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think well, I think he's doing the job he was pretending to do with Gil, in terms of like that level of work.
Right. It's
He's
pulp.
not out,
Yeah.
he's able to be employed, which he technically wasn't able to do before because he actually couldn't write. Now, after all this, he can at least write something that's coherent, and get pictures made. So, but yeah, he's only marginally in a better place because he's the one doing the writing. But that's it. Nothing else has improved in his life.
No. In
Yeah.
fact, now he's kind of in a relationship he doesn't want to be in with Gil's ex-wife,
Mm-hmm.
and Maya's off the table
Mm-hmm.
now. Not that he was ever really interested in pursuing that, but a lot of doors closed for him. Like he's
Yep.
kind of stuck being Uncle Charlie for
Exactly.
the next
Exactly.
10, 12 years,
Yeah. Well,
and
and
he's not comfortable sleeping with Gil's wife
it,
anymore. And
and it's the read that Brodsky has on him, right? Like, you can't go anywhere, man. Like, you got nothing. So you're just going to fall in line and do your job again because that's all you got. And Charlie comes to that realization and I guess hates himself for it, but realizes that he can't go anywhere. He has no options, you know?
Right. I mean,
This
he
is
could
this is
go
all he
to the
has left.
Midwest and bag groceries and get drunk every night. But
Yeah.
that's not really an
Yeah.
option.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. All
Like,
he knows how to do is this, and he's finally able to do it again on some level. So he's going to keep doing it, and it's why Brodsky knows he's not a threat because he has him pegged from the moment he talks to him. You know, he knows how he's going to react. Charlie doesn't yet. He has to figure that out. He has to get to the same place that Brodsky's already at. But by the end of the book, he's there. You know,
right. Well, and I
yeah,
think for Brodsky, you know, Charlie is a very specific type, and they're a dime a dozen.
yeah,
And for
yeah,
Charlie, he thinks he's, a one of one unicorn
yeah, yeah,
that is like, oh, I'm such a
yeah,
gifted,
yeah.
tortured writer, and
Well,
this, and this.
it,
And Brodsky's like, no, I've interacted with a bunch of you. I know what you're gonna do. If I
yeah.
do this, you do this,
It,
and you'll fall in line.
if Charlie were actually special or important, Brodsky would have taken him out. You
Right.
know, if he were someone of significance, someone that was actually potentially a threat because they
You
were
think it
different.
should just shake things up at all,
Yeah,
but he
yeah,
can't move the
Brodsky would
needle
have
on
treated him
anything.
differently.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, but he just treats them as like, oh, yeah, like you said, like I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. You know, I go here, you go there. I'm already I'm so far ahead of you in the game. It doesn't matter what you do. If
It's
he
like
was
playing with a
actually
chess master, right? It's like,
yeah, kind of, yeah, yeah,
you want to move that pawn there, don't do that because I'm going to do this. And
yeah, yeah,
if you're thinking about
yeah,
moving that rook, you really don't want to do that.
yeah. Well,
Like those
and we
guys
said,
are the worst.
yeah, but Charlie can't think more than a move and a half ahead anyway, you know?
Well, so
So
chess is a really good analogy
yeah,
because,
in this case, yeah, because
you know,
he's only thinking about what can I do right now to help myself, and Brodsky already has him in checkmate, you know? Because you're right, yeah,
well, in Brodsky, there's not a single path to victory for Brodsky.
yeah,
Inertia wins for Brodsky.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So like Charlie and Gil both would need a very specific outcome to feel like they won. I don't actually think there's a winning scenario here for Charlie at all. I think for Gil, it would have been taking someone down and feeling like he got, a last jab in.
well, no, yeah,
And for Brodsky, the win is world keeps turning.
status quo.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, you're right. Gil's form of winning would have been public exposure of something, you know,
right.
whether it was the sex abuse up at the camp, or it was he never learned about the truth about Drake Miller and the actual murder, but someone being held accountable for something. I think that's what Gil wanted. Gil wanted someone at the top, someone in power, to face some sort of consequence for something bad that they did. I don't think he would have been real specific about what that would have been. You're right with
For the
Charlie.
record, most
Charlie
of
has
us want that,
that
you
is
know,
very true. Yeah, yeah.
but wanting it and doing something stupid
Yeah.
are not quite enough.
I I think the only thing Charlie wants, I think Charlie does just want the truth of what happened. Um, I think he did need to hear that, even with the understanding that like it's not going to change anything for him. He's not going to do anything with that. But I do think the one thing that because I think that's when he talks with Brodsky at the end, when Brodsky lays out, what we the reader have to assume is what actually happened. When he lays that out for him, he starts a bit like, is it going to change anything? Is it going to make you feel better? Is it going to, anything different? And Charlie's like, no. Brodsky's like, all right, well, let's talk somewhere else. And he tells him. I think that's what Charlie wants. I think he needs to know that. He needs closure on that, even though he knows nothing will change out of it. So him winning is just him finding out. I don't
Right.
think he was in a position like Gil of being like, well, we got to figure out what happened and hold them accountable. I think for him is just like, just fill in these gaps. Why was I there? What was happening? Just answer that question for me, and then I'll figure out what to do afterwards. He has no next step after that. So I think winning for him is just, yeah, getting an answer. And eventually he gets that. And yeah, it's wildly unsatisfying for him. But he probably knew that from the get-go. whether or not he was aware of it, he probably knew that like deep down that getting an answer wasn't going to be fulfilling, but yet that was what his motivation was. Because again, it's not about exposing the truth. It's just him learning it.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What a book.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and stuck the landing. Like I
Yeah.
really didn't remember. I remember liking it, and that was about it. Um, just just way, way better than I remembered.
Yeah. I think that this is one that you can go back to. Because like any kind of great crime thriller, once the story is fresh in your mind, you can go back in and start seeing how they laid tracks out and seeing where like some of the misdirections were, right? Like everything going on at that like estate upstate, out in the woods, finding Al Camp out in the woods, all this stuff, and seeing how they're intentionally misleading you, the reader, because they're misleading Charlie and Gil, right? They're taking you down this path and showing you the seedy underbelly, but also being like, yeah, man, to our specific story, that's not important. That's something that happened and it's terrible and it's horrible and it sucks. But that's not why she died. Again, that
Right.
that emptiness at the end when you get to it and you're just like, wow, man,
But it kind
really?
of had to end that way, right?
It,
Because
oh,
it's
it,
like if
yes,
anything
that
else happens,
absolutely.
it's just like, why do we change genres?
Yeah. It would feel completely disingenuous, right? If there was some really nice, good, happy ending, right?
Right.
If all the bad guys got the comeuppance and Charlie ended up on top, whether, like that feels wildly unearned because it's not that type of story. So yeah, Brubaker and Phillips can subvert the expectations of the genre all they want in kind of the setup and presentation, all that stuff. But ultimately, it's still this very traditional noir story where you get to the end and it's just like, wow, it's so bleak, like it's an ending and there is resolution, but like, man, you're left with that feeling of just like, oh boy, you know, there's
Yeah, I mean,
there
much
nothing to,
like watching the news every day right now, or
yeah, 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 yeah.
reality.
There's an emptiness to it of just like, I don't want to say futility, but almost like that,
No, I mean, there's so much futility in knowing, like, oh, you think you're a big shot Hollywood writer, you can't move the needle on anything that matters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And he just barely lost Best Picture to Citizen Kane,
yeah.
and
Tough one there. Oh no, no,
extremely,
no, not
extremely tough
not
beat.
best picture, not best picture. It was a writing credit.
Writing credit.
It was
Oh,
probably
right.
best screenplay. Yeah,
Yeah, best
yeah,
screenplay. Um,
yeah.
but either way, you would like you would like to think that once you have that stature in the world and you find out something this wrong, you would be able to do something about it, but you can't. It shows how powerful the powerful really, really are. Like it's so
Hmm.
much more
Oh yeah,
than
oh yeah,
than Charlie comprehends.
oh yeah.
But
No,
that is
without
the
question,
end
he
of my
sees how small
notes.
he actually is. Yeah.
Right. And Gil never
Um.
does. Gil never knows how small and insignificant he is. He just thinks with enough passion and
Uh.
fury he can
Yeah.
shake
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
up.
Well, I don't think he. Well, I think maybe he understands he is small and insignificant, but he thinks he can still do something about it. Because again, I think the idea of him saying, "I don't care if we win, just as long as they lose," I don't think he feels he can. He feels, yeah, with enough passion and drive, he can make a difference about something. Whether or not those accolades come to him, whether or not he's showered with praise, I don't think that matters to him. Because he's clearly not. He's not wanting to die, but he seems kind of okay with it if it happened, as long as they lose. So as long as he makes a difference in his mind, that's worth it. Charlie has no delusions of those kinds of grandeur. He has
Right.
no idea that could happen. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing that after all we said about Charlie, he's the realist. of the two
Yeah,
main characters. Like he's
yeah,
still
yeah,
the
yeah.
grounded
Well,
one.
he gets there eventually. Yeah, yeah,
Well, but even when like the whole story when he's talking to Gil, he's the tether to reality for Gil, and yeah, he's
yeah. That's
always
true.
trying
Okay,
to
yeah, that's
rein
true.
Gil
Yeah,
back
yeah,
in,
yeah.
and then you realize like, oh, he's also just floating out there in space. Like he has no idea what's going on in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
world.
yeah. That is yeah. He his delusions are often a different way. His delusions are about his place in the world relative to maybe these movie stars and the celebrities and things like that. As we talked about last week, this idea of like he was in a lot of ways he's not super different from Drake Miller, right? An outsider found his way in, was able
Right.
to
Sure.
be a hanger on and party and be friends with these celebrities and the actors, the famous people, go to their parties and things like that, go to their houses, and be someone that was adjacent to all of it and got seduced by it some, to the point where they thought maybe they mattered a little more than they actually did, you know? And at the very least, I don't think Gil ever had that part, you know? Gil never overestimated his station as a screenwriter, but maybe overestimated what his drive and his morality were in terms of how much that would play, you know?
Yeah.
And Charlie was the opposite. Charlie understood that it's all kind of vapid and useless, but he thought that he was part of that vapid and uselessness of it all. He thought he was part of that when he really wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good distinction.
Mhm.
Um, all right. Any other final thoughts on this book? I mean, I guess
I,
it's silly to ask you to rate a Brubaker Phillips book, but
yeah.
if you're going to,
I mean, I can't. I
it's
honestly
five
can't.
out of five, no notes.
Yeah, I mean, this is I can't rate this book. I can't rate it. I mean, for me, Brubaker and Phillips, like Criminal is number one because it's my second favorite comic of all time. After that, they're all. I mean, I love different things about all of their books, all their collaborations. So it is difficult for me to see it in any other kind of light like that. But yeah, I mean, I generally believe almost all their stuff is near flawless. So I did have my last note. Maybe we can end on this here. It's not a story note. It's actually it's a page layout note, and it's something we talked about a little bit when we did Kill or Be Killed back in the day. We talked about Sean Phillips's art and how generally with Brubaker Phillips books, the page is always divided into thirds. There's a top, middle, and bottom.
Yep.
And they divide the book in that way, and they really don't do a lot of crazy paneling. And I guess they being this would be Sean Phillips. He doesn't do a lot of crazy paneling. There's not a lot of like asymmetrical or angled stuff. It's pretty standard. It's just a matter of the width of various boxes and where he puts the lines in. And in this book, it's pretty standard. You know, he's not doing a lot of crazy stuff in terms of kind of drawing your eye, but every once in a while, he does break something out that I think is really, really cool. And I think this is in the second issue of this. It'll be issue 10, I think. It's after Charlie has gotten punched in the nose by the director, and he's back in the dressing room, and he has the confrontation with Earl Rath, right? Because he thinks that that Rath had something to do with Val's murder, right? And against his better judgment, he's trying to weasel something out of him. And at the bottom of a page there is a three panel picture, but it's the same panel. It's one image, but it's broken up into three panels. You know, it's not three separate panels.
Right.
And it's Charlie looking into the mirror. So you see the back of his head and the front of his face in the reflection, and you see he's looking at Eli Rath, the actor, behind him in the mirror in the mirror image. And the way that it's broken up is like you see the back of his head basically in one frame, you see half of his face in the reflection in the middle frame, and you see the other half of his face, and you see Rath in the mirror reflection in the third. And this idea that it's just one picture one image, but broken up into three specific panels just to break up the image, you know, just
Yeah.
to give it a little extra weight, a little more time, a little more focus on that moment, and allows a place for the narration to go, one narration box, a couple words in each of those panels, just to slow the action down a little bit. And it's not something they did a lot of, where he's subdividing kind of full pictures and full panels like that. But anytime they do something like that, I was reminded in that photo, in that page there, something we mentioned in Killer Be Killed. I don't know if you remember this. There's a panel early on with our main character, I think it's Dylan, right? In Killer Be Killed, where he's sitting on the couch with his roommate and his roommate's girlfriend. And it's one picture. It spans the entire width of the page, right? But Dylan's sitting on the one far end all by himself, and his roommate and his roommate's girlfriend are on the other side. And visually, it's already obvious that he's separated from them, right? They're as far apart as possible to show distance and visualize that. But to emphasize it more, Sean Phillips draws a panel box around his head, you know?
Right.
So he's physically shown as being distant, but just that little bit added flair of the solid, thick white lines around his head, cutting him off even further from not just his roommate but like from the world itself. And so little bits like that of when you can use creative paneling for an artist that doesn't do a lot of it, right? Again, they're not doing like the crazy, like big splash pages where you have to read it clockwise or whatever. You got to turn the comic around, big asymmetrical cuts or anything like that. They don't go crazy on those paneling decisions. It's very straightforward. So when they do utilize kind of visual tricks and motifs like that, I think it's very interesting and worth noting that there's something of intention they're trying to do here. You know, that why do it now on this page? What are you trying to emphasize? And so when they break it out, I always think it's cool because it'll come out of nowhere sometimes. You know, you're reading through and you just see regular panning over and over and over again, and then you see something different and it draws your eye. And I love that about Sean Phillips's work, that he's real judicious about when he drops those in, and when they do, they have a big impact.
Yeah, I've got it up in front of me. The other thing that's striking me now, which this is true of every comic that does, the basic 3-panel structure, but what's really cool in this book is if you're looking at like a full frame 3-panel thing, that there's pretty much at least one on every page. That's basically like a 16:9 aspect ratio. That's like a cinematic ratio for a book about the film industry. And
full across,
yeah, like that. So I realized like that's their style, whether they're writing about the film industry or anything. It just happens to work really, really well.
Yeah, well, and it absolutely does, and it is his normal style when they lay these books out. So again, I think it's also worth noting when they go to a full width panel, right? Whether it's on the top, middle of the bottle, when they decide to do that versus breaking it up into 3 panels there. And also, I think it's worth noting is that even when they go to 9-panel grids, they're not evenly spaced. You know?
Well, okay. Maybe can you help me understand one of them?
Okay, sure.
This is about page like 70, 75, 70. It's 75 to 80, somewhere in there. And this is where they are breaking into the house and they find him in the bathtub. And then you get a middle row of reaction shots. Then you get Charlie pulling Gil away from the bathtub. There's a break in the frame as the guy walks in the door and says, "Hey," but the back of Charlie is also in that frame. So there's not actually any time jump there or space jump.
Yeah.
Like, I like it, but I don't know why I'm seeing what I'm seeing.
Once again, I put the
Is it
here.
Just to convey a beat?
I absolutely, I think it's the exact same thing of the panel that I called out of one picture of Charlie looking in the mirror And the reason it's broken up and what you see in each frame, I think it is meant to be a beat. This idea of almost like a pan of a camera, right?
Right.
You know, you see Gil and Charlie there, and then the camera pans, and now there's the reveal that there's someone there. And I think you're meant to see it because without that panel there, without that panel break there, you can read that. You can read it as if those things are happening simultaneously. When in reality, they probably are happening simultaneously, right?
Right.
But by putting that break there, you see the moment of you focus on Charlie grabbing Gil. Hey, we like basically we got to leave right now. And then by cutting and seeing the back of Charlie's back, I mean, they haven't left yet. They're still right there and focusing on the guy in the doorway, even though it is just one picture, just by putting that break there is that panel break just is a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a rest there for you to kind of register and understand as if you were seeing it cinematically. Like that's a cut, you know, to another actor and another part of the scene that goes on next. And, you know, things like that, again, why do it that way? Because the other way they could have done it is that panel could be just like a guy in a doorway, right?
Right.
Like facing, you know, so there are multiple ways you can do that. So the fact that they chose to do it like this, I think is intentional to show that they're happening at the same time, but you're supposed to register them happening one after another. You know, but because if they're happening on the same panel at the same time, you assume it's happening simultaneously because that's how your mind works. But just by putting that little that panel border in there, if you read comics, you immediately interpret that as being a break, even though things happen simultaneously. In your mind, it plays one and then two. And so by having that breakthrough, even though it's a connected scene, it's happening at the same time in the same moment, your mind puts a break there. And I think they do that for a sense of pacing.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's the only thing I could think of it as. Because I'm like, I guess they're saying that guy walking in the room isn't saying, "Hey there," simultaneously with whatever's happening. But I'm like, but everybody reads comics left to right, top to bottom. No one
Yeah.
thinks, "Listen to me, damn, we
Yeah.
got to go right now." Hey, question mark. That's not happening at the same time, but it's just putting one more beat in there.
Well, and I think also, I think what it conveys in my mind is that um without a panel break there, without a break there, it's just one image. The assumption maybe isn't that it's being spoken at the same time, but the assumption is that guy in the doorway was there the whole time.
Okay. Yes,
And I
that's a
think
good distinction.
by putting
Yes.
the break there is the under is the it gives the illusion that you read that first part, you see that first panel of Charlie and Gil, and the next one is he appears in the doorway right then and there. You know, that it happens the next moment, you know? And but from brevity's sake, you have one picture there because it's one scene, but it gives the impression, it gives the idea that he just walked into frame. He just put his head in and we're just seeing him for the first time. I think that's what that panel break helps to convey. That little bit of space there, a little bit of break, that he was not standing there the whole time, which your mind would think if that panel break weren't there, it was just one image all the way through. So I think something like that is what we're kind of meant to take out of that and what they're trying to convey there.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's helpful. Well, then I have no more questions about this book. I will say it is for a short-ish book, it's still a little bit of a slow burn.
Oh,
So
definitely. Yeah.
in my rating of the book as I was reading, volume 1 got like a 3.5 star, volume 2 got a 4 star, and volume 3 was a 5 star.
I can see that. Yeah. I mean, it is, they,
But like
you
you're
got to
kind of
trust
looking
Phillips.
through a
Yeah.
keyhole the whole time.
Oh,
And
definitely.
you get
Definitely.
more and more of the picture, and the more of the picture I am someone who will binge read something if they're like tantalizing me with not enough information, but I feel like they're gonna give it to me. If
Mhm.
they're not gonna give me the information, then I just get pissed and walk away.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think someone like if you have a history like Brubaker and Phillips, like you know you're going to get something. you know, they're not going to leave you hanging. And I think as someone who has read everything the two of them have worked on ever, I feel confident in saying that if I'm going to trust anybody, and if I'm going to tell another reader to trust any creators, I'm going to tell you trust these guys. You know, because you're right. You get to the end of that first volume, not a lot there. It's just a whole bunch of questions, and you don't even know if any of the questions are important because Charlie himself has no idea what's going on. Our protagonist, essentially, right? So you're left with the idea of like, is this going anywhere? How's it going to wrap up? Then you get to volume 2, and you really just have more questions. You have different questions now. You know, it's like some of the questions you had before didn't get answered, but they were proven irrelevant. And so you are still kind of left wondering as you kind of are taken deeper and deeper into the world and into the story. But again, you know, Brubaker and Phillips are creators that at this point, I trust inherently with any story. That I don't care if it's 6 issues or 12 issues or 30 issues, whatever it is, if it's ongoing, they're going to get me the thing that they're going to get me to a place that I'm going to feel resolved and satisfied with the story. You know, may not be the place that I would take it or agree with, but that's not how they write stories, right? But they're going to get to an end that's going to make sense. It's going to make sense within the world and the structure that they've set up. So yeah, sometimes you got to give it a little bit, and this is definitely a book that's like that.
I mean, I think all their books are like that.
Oh yeah,
all that I've read, they have their audience now, which is what the exclusive deal's about. Of like,
yeah.
Anyone who's read them, you're either going to read everything they do, or you're like, that wasn't for me for whatever reason. And they have earned that trust, and they bank on it now.
I agree. Definitely. And but that, I don't think you're wrong about, it's a bit of a slow start there, but you have an understanding that there's a mystery here, right? You have an understanding already that they're not going to give you everything, you know, from the jump there, but it's still, you still have to be willing to hang in with it. And I think this is a book that, if you do, when you make it to the end, I think it's a book that I don't think a lot of people are going to be like, well, that wasn't worth it. You know,
right.
I think it's a book that when you read it, you get to the end, I think a common reaction for this one, I think, is I got to read that. I got to reread that. Now that I know where it goes, I got to go back and see. I got to go back and experience it again, knowing what I know now. You know, I got to go back and see the clues, what was laid out, what trail of breadcrumbs was going in the right direction, the wrong direction. How did they misdirect the story? How did they lay it out? There's so many layers to it that you can go back and it makes it a worthwhile reread, even though it is a mystery, you know?
Right.
You can still go back to it. Nothing, I don't think, is ruined by returning to the story, because you can always pick up something, latch on to something different.
No, my favorite. My
do.
favorite things are like that. It's like,
yeah,
well, that, and it's like, you know, no one watches the movie of, I don't know, just like Apollo 13 or something that's like based on a true story.
Yeah,
and then are like, wow, well, that's only good once because now I know they survived. It's like that was never the point of the movie. You could have Googled that before you walked in.
Yeah.
And like, you know, some of my favorite rewatch movies are like All the President's Men. Like I could just watch that movie ad nauseum, and I'm not learning new things about like Nixon and Watergate, but I'm observing, you know, new choices from the actors and just amazing cinematography there's from the director and other things.
There's joy in process in that, you know? And I think The Fade Out is a book like that. Well, once you know the end and you see what's there, on a reread, you know, I would encourage folks, if they go and do that, to focus on the process, to try and really look into, okay, what are they setting up with this here, with this storyline, this plot line? What are they giving us, the reader, here now? Where are they trying to lead you? Knowing where the story ends up going, like, why are they taking you to this round? What are they giving you here? And thinking it in that way, you can find and you can mine so much out of the story. And because I think Brubaker and Phillips are masters at that in terms of giving you the story in a very specific and particular way that they want you to experience it. And yeah, even if it's a mystery, where the whole point, not the whole point, where part of the point is figuring out the who done it, the who and the how and the why and all that. When you get that and you realize, well, that really wasn't important or that didn't really matter, you can then go back and reread and focus in on all the other stuff. You
Right.
know, once you know that it isn't some large grand conspiracy and there's no big happy ending that ruins, quote unquote, ruins the experience of reading the story. The reveal isn't what the story is about. Once you understand that and you go back into it, it's when you can keep diving into and finding different things to kind of latch onto and dig in and get more out of, because there's so much there in this book.
Right. Whereas, things like I thoroughly enjoyed watching Lost, but once it was revealed, it was revealed. I've never gone back and rewatched an episode,
Well,
even though there
I
were great episodes.
yeah, well,
But
I think
like
there are some
that
things.
one was all about the mystery.
Well, yeah, and I think about something like The Usual Suspects, which it's great.
As
You
there's
watch it
yeah.
once, and then as soon as you watch it once, you want to watch it again and pick up everything you missed. And then after that, you're like, okay, from a story standpoint, I don't got to see anything else. Maybe you want to rewatch it because there are some incredible performances in that movie, and there are, because it's a really good script. You want to focus on that. But from a story standpoint, you watch it once to learn what happens, and then you watch it again to see how clever it was. But the more times you turn, you're not picking up more things out of it. From a narrative standpoint, the more you rewatch it. I think with a book like this, you can keep going back in and follow down some of these trails a little more, because ultimately none of it goes anywhere. And so
Right.
that kind of nihilism means you're free to explore any little bit of the story that Brubaker and Phillips have laid out there, and kind of go down a bit of a rabbit hole and sink your teeth into that and kind of enjoy those little bits there and really pick them apart, because ultimately, whatever that is, nothing to do with the mystery of it all, nothing to do with the reveal. The more you look into it, you're not going to spoil anything about that, because again, ultimately, none of those things added up to what the mystery was about, because that's not what the book was about ultimately.
Yeah. Totally agree. So anyway, I guess if I give it a 3.5, a 4, and then end it with a 5, then ultimately I'm with you. I just give the
Yeah.
whole thing a 5.
Yeah.
And since it's easier for me to rate it as one, since I have the complete collected edition, which
Oh,
is
sure.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
great way
Yeah.
to read it.
Of course. Yeah. It's a really beautiful, really, really beautiful, publication there. That's one I should, again, that's one I should probably pick up, but that would then mean I have the books
Physically, digitally,
in a fourth
individual.
format.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got single issues physical. I've got the single issues digitally, the trades physically, the trades digitally. And so, yeah, it would be a fifth format if I got the completed edition. But it is really nice, and that's one that would look good on the shelf. So, um, you know, don't think I haven't thought about it. But it's also like, again, do I really need another version of it? And
Well, I
depending
don't
on
know
the
if
date.
you're ever the guy who like lends stuff out and doesn't know if you'll get it back, uh or even just give someone something straight off your shelf. Because I do that, which is sometimes how I justify. Like I think like when I bought this, I had the original like trades.
Mhm.
Um and I gave those to my father-in-law, like, here, you should read this, and when you're done with them, give them to someone else, donate them to the library, whatever. Um and that's not a bad way to be. Uh
No, no,
especially since
that's
this
great. Yeah,
collected edition was $25.
yeah,
Although, yeah, now what I want to do is like when I sell off old books, like trades, I use an app called Pango Books where I sell things, and it's direct to the buyer, and it's books only, but you can move a lot of trade paperbacks there. I started sticking Story Dark bookmarks in them, especially if they're books we've covered.
there we go.
So I'm like,
There we go.
I think it's still an extra step of work for someone like that. So I'm like, I think the next bookmarks we do or cards or whatever need a QR code where you can scan and go straight to. The
Oh, there
like
we
tree.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. Let's work on that. Let's work on that.
When's the last time you like fully typed out a website on your phone instead of clicking a link? Or
Yeah. Every once in a while I'll do that. Yeah. But you know,
well,
that
we're built different. Born in the late 19th century.
Yeah.
Or 20th century.
Like
late 1900s. That's what. Yeah. No. Gen Z or Gen Alpha loves to say that we're born in the late 1900s, and it's a savage.
Yeah. Which is
it shows violence.
Factually correct, but
right.
it's not hurt. It's hurtful, yeah, but it's also it's kind of factually correct. So
yeah, no, they get a pass.
Yeah, no, that's great. And they do. Yeah, still mean.
Yeah, like uncalled for. I don't even speak to anyone Gen Alpha. There's no reason to come after me. But anyway, all right. Well, thanks for reading and listening, and we will be back next week with another Zero to help set up whatever we're going to do next. So stay tuned, and you'll find out next week.
Peace.